In Boleyn Traitor, Gregory returns once again to the Tudor court. This book is narrated by Jane Boleyn herself, Lady Rochford, Jane Parker, sister-in-law to Anne Boleyn by marriage to her brother George. Jane's story has been told many times, some more correct than others, but she is historically infamous for her testimony in the trials of Anne and her brother. My research tells me that this is not actually established, but Gregory reimagines Jane as a far more complex figure, a survivor, maybe a spy, and navigating shifting loyalties, danger, and power in the treacherous court. If you know your history, then you know what ultimately happened to her, but this book is not about that. Now, this novel spans from Jane's early marriage to George Boleyn all the way through the dizzying heights and the crushing lows of Henry VIII's Tudor court. I do feel that over the years, Phillipa Gregory's books, especially the Tudor ones, have created such kind of like a chatter as to whether her books are just a load of fluff or actually contain some historical fact. Now, I think it's a bit of both, to be honest. It's got historical fact in it because it has real people in there that lived over like 500-600 years ago. And sometimes I do think poor Phillipa Gregory does get a bit of a bad rap. But my love for history and reading historical novels, I will always attribute to picking up this book here, which is The Other Boleyn Girl. This is not the copy I had to read. I had a paperback, but when I saw this in a charity shop, I thought, oh, nice hardback. So when I heard that she was bringing out another book in the Tudor court, I was actually really quite excited. And honestly, I have to say this book did entertain me from start to finish. I really like the fact that Gregory humanizes Jane and kind of rises her from the footnotes of history. As you saw at the beginning of the video, it's a rather beautiful book to have. I think that's fabulous. Is that Jane rising up from the bones of the people she trampled on to get where she was? Having said that, Jane is written as plotting, but not against Anne and not against George. It is narrated by Jane, and she comes off as clever, ambitious, quite fearful actually, and quite heartbreakingly trapped by the expectations of not only the king, but her family as well. What stood out for me as well, that Gregory gave Jane quite a quiet desperation, and I felt it was very cleverly written because it just goes to show as you read that actually desperation can look like betrayal, but actually it's called survival. She paints the Tudor court very well to be very suffocating. I've read all her Tudor books, and I've enjoyed pretty much all of them, to be honest, but this particular one, I think she was very much on point. I think because she had a break from the Tudor court, writing all her other books and stuff. I felt she was very on point, and I could feel it. I could feel the suffocation that poor Jane was going through. I have to say that I am guilty a little bit of not making up my own mind about Jane before I read this book. You know, you hear of all the stories where she's a backstabber and, you know, she sent George to the execution block and she hated Anne and all sorts, and she was like, off to Cromwell, blah, blah, blah. Yes, in this book, she is a spy for Cromwell, but also it was written in a very lovely kind of friendship way. Cromwell came up the ranks, and the nobles that were born in the ranks didn't really like it, and so he had the power, but he doesn't necessarily have the friends. Whereas I feel that's the same for Jane. Yes, she was born into quite a well-off, noble family in a way, but I don't know, this book just felt that she was on her own. She was on, people taking advantage of her. She had a lot of wealth and power in her job because she was the sort of like the top lady's maid, and she bossed people about. She did start off being in Anne Boleyn's court, and then of course Jane Seymour's court, and then Catherine Howard's court, and she went from riches to rags to riches again. So yeah, as I said, I'm kind of guilty of just thinking of that, you know, oh, she was a horrible woman, she did this, she did that, you know. But I really enjoyed this because, as I mentioned earlier, this book really humanizes Jane and gives her voice, and I really enjoyed that. It does make me want to learn more about Jane so I can actually separate the fact from the fiction and then start to make up my own mind. I felt the pacing in this book was pretty good, actually. I don't think there was ever a time that I felt bored. It didn't drag for me, and every time I stopped being inside the pages of this book, I actually kept thinking about it and thinking, oh, I need to get back to it. And that for me is a really good sign. I feel it's a classic Gregory of old. Her most recent series, I can't remember it, but it's here. I read the first book and didn't like it at all and thought, no, not at all. But was it the fact that this book was set in Tudor times that made me think, yes, great, love it? I don't know. I don't love everything I read that is a Tudor book or a Tudor novel, whether it be fiction or non-fiction. But there was just something exciting about the fact that this, you know, she was writing this book, and it makes me think, ooh, is she going to write more? I would say this book is very readable. It's quite emotional, and it makes you very aware of the dangerous dancing between power, survival, and all the struggles that this poor lady went through in her life. Having said that, I do want to say that any fictional portrayal has to fill in the gaps that history fails to imbue. I think history purists might argue that some of the interpretations may feel a little bit over-justifying, but Gregory herself has said that it's not a definitive biography, but a fictional imagining. I for one accept that this happens in historical fiction. And honestly, I just enjoy being back in that time frame, to be honest with you. Going back to the people and the characters that I've read before almost feels like I'm coming home, and I know that sounds strange, but I just enjoy immersing myself into it all. Jane's actions are morally ambiguous, but I would like to see you find your way through the maze of the Tudor court with growing a second face, or indeed a second head. So I'm just going to end this by having a little section of who will like it and I think who won't. First off, we're going to say who will like it. If you enjoy reading books about Tudor fiction, and in particular the struggles of a woman, then definitely this one is for you. If you have an interest in a character-driven book with power dynamics, again, this one is for you. If you do not mind historical speculation, reinterpretation, you like immersive settings, court intrigue, politics, power and pageantry, then this book is definitely for you. If you prefer your books to be very factual, scholarly, and require that your history accounts in books are 100% proven, then don't read this. If you dislike revisionist portrayals that challenge traditional version of events, then yeah, don't read it. And also, if you're sensitive to recurring tropes in these types of books, you know, the scheming courtiers, the villainous kings and queens, then don't read this. But if, like me, you enjoy just immersing yourself in a jolly good story that actually makes you want to go out and read more about the characters in this book, then I would definitely read this. If you have not read a Philippa Gregory before, you don't have to read the others to enjoy this one. It is a standalone. You are now going to see a slide of non-fiction books about Jane if you are interested. So yeah, we've come to the end. I hope you enjoyed my little chat about this rather lovely book. I have to say that I really, really enjoyed it. I'm glad to have read it, and I kind of feel that I need another one from her. Anyway, I would love to see you here again. So have a great day, happy reading, and I'll see you again soon. Bye. Thank you so much for spending your time with me today and watching. If you like what you saw, please do come back for more. If you want to ring my bell, if you want to subscribe, and if you want to comment, you know what to do. I appreciate every minute you stay with me at Bookish Travels, and I just want to say thank you. See you again. Bye.